Hi, I'm Michelle Fitzgerald with the Senzar Learning Center, and today I'm going to talk with you a little bit more about belief codes. I published very recently a YouTube video on clearing belief codes with the mini-me method. And so you might want to check that out. But today I'm going to talk a little bit more about belief codes and specifically about inherited belief codes. So let's back up just a little bit and I'll explain what belief codes are. Belief codes are thought patterns that we create ourselves either in present lifetime experiences as a result of present lifetime experiences or past lifetime experiences. Many of our belief codes are actually carryovers from past life episodes, usually trauma episodes, where we've had a reaction to a particular traumatic event, and we have some very strong thoughts and feelings during the course of that event, and the thoughts that we have, they get stored in our memory system as a type of rule about life, and giving us instructions as we get into the next lifetime about what to do or what to avoid to have more pleasure and less pain in life. The problem with belief codes is that they're pretty much irrelevant to what we're doing today, and many of them are outright erroneous. They can also adapt. They do adapt profusely over time, and I don't have time to get into that today, but they turn into ideas that are quite far removed from what they originally were. It's always interesting to watch that. I'm going to show you a little teeny bit about that today. A big chunk of our belief codes are inherited codes. In fact, in my research, about 70 to 80% of the codes in our memory archives are inherited. And again, I call these codes because they remind me very much of computer programs. They're kind of like life programs. With our computer programs, there are software. It's out of sight. Belief codes are accessible through the subconscious mind only, or usually, I shouldn't say only, because there are ways to, very often they'll flit right through our conscious mind or rise up to the conscious surface, but most people don't pay attention to them when they do race by like that. Typically we're out of the loop on these things, and they're just down there at a subconscious level, like software. Software is running all kinds of stuff on your computer, on all your devices, with all your apps, all that type of thing, but you never actually see, unless you're a computer programmer, you never actually see the code. Same with these codes. We're not seeing them, we're not aware of them, yet they're predicting and dictating certain outcomes just like a software program. With belief codes, they're dictating life experiences, so you could call them appropriately life programs. But again, there's problems with these life programs because it's like bad data in, bad data out. This is the bad data in thing producing an outcome that is usually not very desirable. And again, I'm going to give you a couple of examples of that. I want to focus on inherited codes today, just to show you how impacting they can be, because they're such a gigantic portion of our belief code inventory. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories about myself that are actually quite laughable, but they're the byproduct of belief codes and really make the point. One I call the potato code. And the way I discovered that I had this belief code, I since have gotten rid of it, but the way I discovered that I had it was, this was a number of years ago, and I decided I was about 10 pounds, 15 pounds overweight, and I wanted to lose the weight. And I wanted to do it pretty rapidly, and I had heard about the South Beach diet. And I thought, well, you know, that sounds kind of good, and it's supposedly pretty fast, and for a small amount of weight especially, and I'm going to do this South Beach diet. Well, if you've ever read about the South Beach diet, what you do in the first 2 weeks of the diet plan is you cut out all bread, you cut out potatoes, you can't eat any potatoes, you cut out all of the bad carbohydrates, and you're eating mainly meats and fish and lots of protein, lots of vegetables. That's basically what you're doing. And when I read the instructions and I saw no potatoes, I actually observed that I kind of had I had a little emotional reaction to that. I felt a little uneasy about not eating potatoes. Now, why was this? Well, one of the reasons I was 10, 15 pounds overweight was because I ate potatoes every single day, and I just didn't eat one little helping of potatoes. I was eating at that time at least 2, sometimes 3 helpings of potatoes a day. I mean, 3 whole potatoes a day, plus all the other food that I was consuming. To this day, I absolutely love potatoes. I've always, told folks that if I was ever stuck on a desert island and there was only one food left, what would I want? I would want a potato. So I've got this thing about potatoes, and here it says you can't eat any potatoes. And I thought, well, I can get away with this for just a couple of weeks. It's not going to be that big of a deal. And so I went on the diet. I started dropping weight so rapidly. It was just extraordinary. In fact, it was almost kind of scary. It was literally like it was melting off of me. But I also started not feeling very well. I was kind of dizzy. I was having these really sharp pains in my stomach. And I just thought, that's very, very strange. And I'm losing weight, even though I know it can happen pretty quickly with this diet. I'm losing weight way too quickly. And I couldn't, within a week, I couldn't fit in my pants. And I was wearing at the time a size 8 pants. And I said, I'm going to have to go buy some more pants. And it's only been like a week into this program. I went down to one of the ladies' shops, and I started trying on pants. I had dropped in that short period of time to a size 4. And my reaction was, gosh, I almost didn't believe it. I just said, they must be cutting this clothing. It had been a while since I had bought clothes. And I thought, maybe they're really making size 4s much bigger than they used to in the old days. Maybe it's just been so long since I bought clothes, I'm just out of the loop on how they're cutting these styles. But anyway, the pains got much, much worse in my stomach. And I finally decided to check, gosh, I think I might be running some belief codes. And I checked, and sure enough, I dowsed and just asked the question, do I have any belief codes that are causing these pains that I'm having in my stomach? And the answer was yes, I did. It was only one belief code. And I dowsed, I just asked the dowsing question. At the time I was using just simple muscle testing, like this. You could use a pendulum, rods, whatever you want, or any other type of intuition for that matter. But I dowsed that I had one belief code, and I checked if it was a present life code that I had created in this lifetime, if it was the past life code. The answers were no and no. And the next choice would be, is it an inherited code? The answer was yes. And I anyway, tracked it. I used something called longhand code decryption. And I started with just seeing what does this have to do with? When did this code, which ancestor crafted this code, counted back in time? And what's the main theme of what's going on? What's the main theme of the code? I instantly saw a picture in my mind of a potato. And I dowsed, does this have anything to do with potatoes? And, well, I'm Irish. I mean, my name is, my whole name would be Michelle Kathleen O'Brien Fitzgerald. That is Irish. And I've got a lot of ancestors that went through the potato famine in Ireland. And as soon as I found out that the code had to do with potatoes, I dowsed him. There was a flash, just an intuitive flash. I had stopped eating potatoes. And instantly I saw the code in my mind. Logically, I mean, anybody with half a brain would be able to figure out what this code was, just knowing a wee bit about your ancestry. The code was, if I stop eating potatoes, if we don't have potatoes, which is equivalent to if we don't eat potatoes, we're going to starve to death. And my body actually went into a starvation response. That's why the weight was falling off so fast. That's why I was having the really bad pains in my stomach. I was experiencing, in our time now, starvation responses, just like I was one of my ancestors who probably experienced that very thing. I laughed about it. I said, I'm not starving today. And I just looked around, I went into the kitchen, I looked around, I saw how much food was available. And I just reminded myself how much food I had been eating. I mean, I had just been stuffing myself with other food, just not eating the carbohydrates and certainly not eating potatoes. And instantly, as soon as I did that, and I kind of laughed about the whole thing, and I saw what I had done, that I had pulled up this code, I just, let it go. It just said, this is not true. That's how you collapse a code once you know what it is. This is simply not true or applicable to me today. The code collapsed just like that. My pains literally instantly disappeared and the rapid weight gain stopped. Now, that might be a negative because I was actually trying to lose weight, but because of that starvation code opening up, I actually lost all the weight that I wanted to lose in that 1 week period of time. So I didn't really have to go forward. I just put myself on a maintenance plan at that point. I saw that the code had benefited me in a kind of weird way, but it just wasn't healthy to be losing weight that fast and to have all those pains in my stomach. So that's code story number 1, the potato code. Second story also involves food. This was also another, not so much diet experience, but a kind of a healthy eating plan that I decided to go on. And I just was being a little more mindful of what I was ingesting. And one of the things I decided I would have that I hadn't had in a really long time, and I deemed in my mind that it would probably be pretty healthy for me, was barley. And I hadn't eaten I love barley, but I hadn't eaten it in a really long time. I hadn't had any of it. And so I made a nice dinner one night and it included barley, and I happened to choose chicken as the main ingredient, the main other item that would go with the dinner. And I made up this really nice plate and just noticed that there's chicken and there's barley, and I enjoyed my dinner and I didn't think anything of it. Well, I had made quite a large portion of barley, and I had a big bowl of it in the refrigerator. And I noticed that night, within not a very long period of time, I mean like less than an hour, I started getting severely bloated. I mean, really uncomfortable, stomach stuff just blowing up like I was pregnant. I mean, I started getting very bloated, and I thought, wow, what's this? And blah, 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 blah. It eventually goes away. I don't pay much attention to it. And I did wonder if this had anything to do with barley, because I hadn't eaten it had any of that to eat for a very long time. But I thought, nah, I doubt it, and went along my way. The next night, there was some barley left, so I had some barley. And the next night, the same thing happens. I just blow up like a balloon. And I'm thinking, wow, something's going on here. Does this have anything to do with barley? And I got kind of I call it a wimpy yes response. If you're using your muscle testing, it's kind of like you just have a sense that it's not a true yes or no. If you're using a pendulum, you can actually program your pendulum, or if you're using dowsing rods, you can program your rods to very precisely give you what I call the wimpy yes or the wimpy no, which means that the answer is yes, kind of. You're moving in the right direction, but you don't really have it exactly right. But keep on asking questions because you're heading in the right direction. The wimpy no is, the answer is not exactly right. You may have a hair of it right, but you're moving in the wrong direction. Ask better questions. So I got a wimpy yes, it had something to do with barley, but not exactly. And so I kept on checking, and the long and the short of it was this. It had to do with the fact that I said, am I translating barley? This would be a standard thing to do when you're doing what I call longhand code decryption. Am I translating barley as something other than barley? And the answer was yes. And I just used my inner visioning. I call it the whiteboard technique to see. You could also use a dictionary and do dictionary dowsing for this, but it's just faster for me to just see stuff on this big whiteboard in my head. In my psychic vision, I said, what have I translated barley to? And I instantly saw liquor. And I instantly understood that it meant stout, the kind of, when you drink like Guinness stout ale. Stout is a type of liquor or a type of ale. And barley can be used, it can be used to make stout. And so one of my translations, and that was even logical, I thought that barley had become equivalent to stout. And I asked another question, so I don't know why that would be problematic. Is there any other translation of the word stout in my subconscious mind? Is there any other equivalent? This is called code adaptation. where you'll have a particular language patterning, the way the code is structured, and it will adapt to other meanings that actually have a relationship to the original idea, but end up being something quite far removed from that. So barley was equivalent to stout, and the other equivalent, and again, I used inner visioning to get this. This is the technique I used. I just said, show me any other definitions that I have in my subconscious mind of stout and barley. What am I equating this to? I instantly saw a picture, and I've seen his picture before in history books and things like that. I instantly saw a picture of Henry VIII, King Henry VIII. And the long and the short of it, I won't go into all the ways that I translated this because I was using a kind of advanced translation technique that I'm not going to teach you today. But here was the belief code. The belief code was, when I looked at that plate of chicken and barley, the problem wasn't just barley. It was the fact that it was positioned next to chicken. I had consumed barley many times before in this lifetime, in earlier ages, when I was much younger, and I had never had any kind of reaction to barley. I also doused if I was just, if I was having some kind of allergic reaction to barley now, and the answer was yes. And the problem was because I saw the barley and the chicken next to each other. And those two, they're called memory keys. And those two items next to each other woke up the code, which basically was about my Fitzgerald lineage and their problems with Henry VIII. This was inherited coding, and it went like this. If you're a chicken, Henry VIII was very stout. That's how he became equivalent in my subconscious mind to stout, and stout then connected to barley. So when I saw the chicken and the barley, my mind registered, what are the rules about experiencing chickenness, which can go to translate lack of bravery, being a chicken or not being a chicken, when it comes to dealing with Henry VIII. And for my family, my lineage, that was a bad news story. They had a very tough time with Henry VIII in the long run. Many of them were executed by the agents of Henry VIII and the Fitzgerald clan. And the code went, if you're a chicken, when you're dealing with Henry VIII, you're going to end up suffering, you're going to end up dead. But if you're not a chicken, if you're not brave, you're going to end up dead, or you're going to end up paying a big price. So you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Bottom line, you need to be a chicken, but you can't be a chicken. You need to be a chicken, but you can't be a chicken from a standpoint of bravery when you're dealing with Henry VIII. And instantaneously, when I woke up those codes, I woke up the negative memories of my ancestry dealing with Henry VIII, and that meant a problem with barley. And I became literally instantly allergic to barley. I laughed and I just said, barley is not equivalent to Henry VIII. Period. And even if it was, there is no problem with Henry VIII today. He's long gone. I have no problems with him or any of his ancestors. Everything's fine. Immediately, the problem with barley went away. I had barley that evening. I had absolutely no reaction. I have had barley many times since, and I have had absolutely no reaction to barley. It was an instantaneous reaction to me waking up a belief code based on two memory keys that I saw in my environment that were symbolic of a past situation that wasn't even my memory. It was an ancestor's memory. So I tell you these stories just to show you neither one of these codes were my codes. They were thought patterns or judgments about the way life works that were crafted by my ancestors but were capable of affecting me instantaneously in real life today. So dealing with ancestral codes. Now, again, the longhand method that I use to find and clear these codes is pretty complicated, way beyond what I could teach in a YouTube video. But there are other ways that you could ferret out and clear ancestral codes. I want to back up to the beginning when I mentioned that about 70 to 80% of the belief codes that you've got in your belief code archives, your memory archives, are inherited codes. The outcome when those codes get activated, and they'll activate, not all those codes will activate in a lifetime, but many of those codes will activate. And in most cases, when they activate, they're going to cause you some kind of trouble. It might be a minor irritation, like bloating of the stomach, something like that. But it could be something very major. Bottom line, it's going to be something that what I would classify as undesirable when belief codes awaken, and in most cases. And so you want to, if you can, get rid of these things whenever you have the time to address the situation, or whenever they're up and active and you just want to nip them in the bud. One of the techniques you could clear to clear belief codes, will work not all the time, but will work a good percentage of the time, is the mini-me method. So go and watch that particular video that I worked. How would you deal with the mini-me method when you're dealing with ancestral codes? Well, let's say you're having a problem like a bloated stomach. You would first just douse or use some other form of intuition to say, okay, this bloated stomach situation that I'm having, is any of it, there are other things that could cause a bloated stomach, but is any of it being caused by belief codes? Yes. How many belief codes? 2. Okay. Are any of those belief codes inherited codes? Start from the beginning, finding out if they're inherited codes, because statistically, there's a good chance that there'll be some inherited codes up. So are any of the codes inherited codes? Yes. Well, how many of the codes are inherited codes? 2. Oh, okay. Both of them are inherited? Yes. Okay. Can they be structured as mini-me statements? Again, you're going to need to watch that video to understand what I'm talking about now. Can they be structured as mini-me statements? Yes. And all you need to do is find the mini-me's and then collapse them with the standard procedure for collapsing mini-me's, and you're done. So that's your little tutorial today for dealing with belief codes, and just understand ancestral belief codes, and understanding a little bit more about how abundant they are in your memory system, and how impacting they can actually be. Hope that was helpful, and I look forward to talking to you next time.